Hey, it's Ken Lewis. Welcome to Q&A with Ken, your twice weekly broadcast during the quarantine, coming to you every Wednesday and Sunday, 8 to 9 p.m. New York City time. Broadcasting to you from ground zero of the American COVID-19 outbreak. Not a great place to be right now. If you don't know me, my name is Ken Lewis. I'm credited on 99 gold records, 57 Grammy nominations as a producer, mixer, songwriter, arranger, musician, vocalist, engineer, probably some other things. Lately I've been working with BTS, just mixed 3 songs on their new record, worked on Taylor Swift, JuiceWrld, Harlord, Des Rocks, currently mixing Layla Blues album for Island Records, worked with Mark Ronson lately, so a lot of good stuff going on. While we're all stuck inside, I wanted to give back some of my time and knowledge, maybe help some of you guys sidestep some real studio problems that you're having. So stick around and ask your questions on the chat roll. I'll also be answering a ton of pre-submitted questions, and let's all studio the quarantine together. By the way, this is a new YouTube channel, so please like and subscribe, ring the bell, all of that crap. You know what to do. So speaking of New York and the quarantine, we've been locked in since mid-March now. How long has it been since you guys have been locked in? And please tell me, unless you have one of these critical jobs that still needs to get done, that you're locking yourselves in. I think I just saw some insane number of deaths today, like 14,000 in the U.S. I couldn't even believe that number. Yep. Yeah, deaths past 14,000 in the United States today. And I mean, at least for a while, a good half of them minimum were coming from New York, New Jersey. Maybe still more. I haven't looked at the statistics lately. They just got to be a little bit too overwhelming for me. So, as you can see, I've gone full mountain man for the apocalypse. I figure if there was ever a time to just let everything grow and see what happens, now's the time. So, I haven't had my hair this long since... I think since my mid-20s, and I've never had a beard. This is all new. It's like a patchy mess, but I mean, if I'm ever going to do it, now's the time. So let me get right into Q&A. I got a bunch of great questions tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and dig in because I have a feeling this might run long anyway. So let me break down what's going to be on the show tonight. So I'm going to do maybe 15 minutes of Q&A. And then I'm going to spend 10 minutes showing you guys a lot of interesting tricks about phase. It's going to be a real phase-centric night, especially low-end phase and drum phase. So that's on the agenda. Then more Q&A, and then I'm going to do story time with Ken. I think tonight's story time is probably going to be shooting pool with Jay-Z. That was one of my favorite studio memories. And then I'll do a lightning round of last minute questions, and then I'm going to do a sprint mix tonight from a great rock band out of New York City called Don't Believe in Ghosts. And so stick around for that at the end of the night, and I'll be doing up a mix. And that sprint mix that I'm doing is actually available for sale at Audio School Online at my school if anybody wants to check it out. Tonight I put all of the sprint mixes on the site at 50% off just during the broadcast. So anybody tuning in, if you want to check them out, now's probably the time. And like I said, I'm going to do one at the end of the show. It's going to be a rock one. So, all right, Q&A. Dimitri from Reunion Island asks, hello, Mr. Lewis. In the song All Night from BTS and JuiceWrld, how did you approach mixing the bass synth? Is there a lot of information on the sides, as your bass is always precise? Well, thank you for that. So, I don't know about the precision of the bass, but it was basically 2 plugins. It was an L2 just to kind of keep things, lightly in the same place volume wise, real gentle limiting, and then the other thing I used, I can't show you the exact track because I don't own the masters to that BTS stuff, but I can show you the plugin that I used. The plugin that I used to fatten up the bass line is called Submarine, and it's a Waves plugin, and the exact setting I saved earlier which is just that. Super, super simple. Actually, I take that back. This is, let me yeah, maybe okay. All right. Now we'll do that. So, yeah. So this thing is called Submarine. You basically set the frequency range that you want it to listen to an effect. And then this drops the signal an octave underneath it. I wonder if I'm on a session. I can't show you this one either. But anyway, I'm going to move on from that. But this is the plugin that I fattened up the bass with. This is the exact settings that I used. This thing can be super, super severe, so you got to use it with, you know, you got to listen carefully to make sure you're not overdoing it. And sometimes it adds too much, like super, super sub. And if you don't have a sub that's replicating those frequencies and you don't know what's going on down there, then you might risk really muddying up your mix with something like Submarine. So make sure you have good subs if you're going to use those sub processors. All right, question 2. Vic asks, I would like to know how to mix background instruments so that you can still hear them without overpowering the vocals, drums, and bass, while still having the top frequencies sounding full and wide. Thank you. Well, Vic, I think straight back to the sprint mixes. I think the sprint mixes were pretty much designed for you. They're designed to make you stop thinking about all of the technology, stop thinking about in the moment what plugin you're gonna add to the mix and what EQ you're gonna turn, and it forces you to start listening more to how you strike your balances, and it makes you pay attention to the most important things, which are striking great balances, which is what you're asking. So you should, if you're on the broadcast, Vic, I hope you are, you should stick around for the sprint mix, and you should try the sprint mixes on my site. I think those are the single best tools I have for improving your mixing skills quickly, but you have to put in the work. You got to treat them like school. Okay, so I think that's the best answer I can give you with that. I can just show you how to do it later. And it's, you know, I think you get the core of your mix together, and you make sure that your main elements, your vocals, drums, bass, are all good and doing what they want, and then you start filling in around it. And sometimes you listen really loud, sometimes you listen really soft. You know, it's got to sound great at all volumes, and it's got to balance out well. So, all right. Next question. Rob asks, hey Ken, hope all is well with you and your family. Thank you, Rob. How do you mix a 2-track in order for the vocals to sit right? That's a tough one. You know, because every 2-track is different. So I think the way I would rather answer that question would be to say, what are some of the ways, well, okay, let me back up. If you're a producer making the beat, leave some room for the vocalist. I used to be signed as a producer to Boy Wonder, Drake's producer. And one of the most important things that Wonder taught me about beat making in hip hop was to leave space for the rapper and to make sure that they can latch onto that beat and really feel it, but that there's plenty of room for their voice so they can envision themselves on your track. So as a producer, I think it starts there. And then as a mixer, you're kind of stuck with what you're given to an extent. The one thing that you can do, you can put something like this across the 2-track. This is an MS EQ, middle side EQ, if you don't know what middle side is. So this section only affects what's in the middle of the signal, and this section only affects what's on the sides. So if I'm working on a 2-track, then I may do something like pull out only the middle and the vocal frequencies. Not a ton. I wouldn't pull out 7, but 5 or 6 maybe, unless it's, in kind of a tighter notch. You basically want to dip out a little bit just so the vocal can sit right in those frequencies, and those are like right where the enunciation frequencies are for the voice. So that's one way to do it. Another way is something like the stereo width on this. You can kind of pick a frequency and pull it a little bit outside to compensate, so you can add music around the vocal. You can use a mid-side thing to kind of shape where the music envelops the vocal and doesn't get in its way. It's not a perfect solution. There is no perfect solution to mixing a 2-track that isn't produced well or is just too dense. Okay. Let's see. Kevin from Blue Sky asks, do you compress or EQ vocals first in your signal chain? Let me find an example. I feel like... okay. Let's see. How about... Sure. Well, I'm going to pull this up anyway, so let me just do it. Okay. Techniques. All right, so I'm going to read the question again. Kevin from Blue Sky, do you compress or EQ vocals first in your signal chain? Usually, I compress. If I have... I'll be the same again. Love is falling into pieces. Where did the... All right, here we go. All right. New York City. New York City. Make you know. Okay, so here's the lead vocal stem. So I would probably start with a compressor. Kramer Pie is one of my favorites. New York City, gonna make you numb when you lose your... And New York City, gonna make you numb when you lose your life as you once knew it. So basically what I'm looking for with vocal compression usually is to make sure that I don't turn it inside out, to make sure that I don't make the loud parts too quiet and the quiet parts too present. So I'm looking to strike that in-between balance, but usually a plugin like Kramer Pie or like a UAD Fairchild 660, I'm looking for, personally, for that meter always deflecting. I want to find the part that even when the vocalist is singing softer, wherever the softer parts of the song are, that the compressor is still reacting just a little bit. And I may split the lead vocal off, so that the loud parts are treated with a different compressor than the soft parts, or the loud parts are treated with different EQ than the soft parts. Any of those things are generally possible, because typically as a vocalist starts belting, singing a lot louder, they lose the richness of their voice. They lose all of that bass, and it starts getting a lot thinner and more powerful and centered in the mid-range and top. So the EQ that worked during the breathy section is probably not going to be the EQ that works during the power section. And same with the EQ, or same with the compressor. You need to know which one is which. So treat those accordingly. And feel free, if you only have a single lead vocal track that's really dynamic, to chop it up and put the more dynamic parts on one track and the softer parts on another, and treat them differently. Sometimes I'll split up a lead vocal 5, 6, 7 different times just to get it exactly the way I want it. And there's a famous producer named Mutt Lange. Anybody knows him? Everybody should know Mutt Lange. Mutt Lange would do the most insane, crazy vocal comping. He would re-EQ every single word, syllable. Thank God I never worked. Well, I would have killed to work with him. Who am I kidding? Even having to do that kind of stuff, I would have loved to, and still would. So Mutt, if you're out there, call me. Okay. Next, I think All right, I'm going to do one more question, and then I'm going to do the phase correction stuff. And that topic sounds probably super boring, but it's probably going to be really eye and ear opening for a lot of you guys and girls. Okay, Ryan asks, with gain staging, how do you get the entire track to have a loud, full, and non-distorted sound? Well, I mean, that's well, I don't know that you do that within gain staging. I think that's a process that takes the entire mix, and you're making 1,000 small decisions that add up to how that entire track has that loud, full, and non-distorted sound. And that's really the truth. It's not just like one magic bullet. It's not one style of approach. It's the entire time, everything. So here are some things, if you don't know, that might help. Low frequencies tend to drive the RMS on a mix really hard. So if you have an 808 heavy song, the 808 is going to be what drives the RMS and the loudness of the mix, and not so much the mid-range. So a really 808 heavy song at the same RMS as like a more pop friendly with a more even low end but not so subby, the pop song is going to sound a lot louder on the radio than the 808 one, because all of the mix has to have all of that room for the low end. So if you listen to pop radio and you hear a hip hop song that's really low, and then the next song that comes in is like a really loud rock song or a really loud pop song, that's what's going on. It's the low end of the mix is, you have to put so much low end to get it to have that really big fat bottom that you lose some of the perceived loudness. So it's always a balance between how much low end you want and what your perceived loudness is that you're trying to go for. And those two things are always a push and pull, and always something that you're trying to find a balance for. Mixed bus compression can help with that. There's a whole bunch of different things that can help with that, but that's, in a nutshell, that's basically what you're trying to do. Okay. Let me show you guys while I have this session up. So I wanted to go over some alignment things, phase issues. So anybody on the broadcast, we have a good broadcast cooking right now. Speaking of which, hey, all right. Oh, we got Pop Collective, Mike Heaves. I saw you last week. Shadow Lights, Dave Stedman. Hey, Dave. George, Mike. Good crowd tonight. All right. Okay. So where was I with phase? Okay, let me pull up this bass. This is a single bass guitar that was recorded. The cabinet was recorded with I think one is a DI and the other is a live mic. Too much started. Okay, so here's the DI, and here's the live mic. They sound pretty similar, but together, they have this kind of phasey quality to them. And so I want to see if I can get them to support and enhance each other instead of canceling each other out. So basically what's happening is there was just, if you look at the waveforms, see if this, do you see how these waveforms should be really lined up, but they're really just slightly off? Do you see how that's working? So this really should be about right there on the bottom. So this bottom track has just been, the microphone was like an inch off of the grill, and that was just enough to cause that phase discrepancy. So what I'm going to do is correct the phase using a plugin called Auto Align. This is a Sound Radix. So Auto Align, if I say if bass 1 is the one that I want everything to align to, see it's a little bit ahead, so I want to pull this one forward a bit. I'm not going to do it by hand, I'm going to have the computer do it. So I'm going to send from the source, and I'm going to pick up the receive, send from one, receive from one. So this is now analyzing what's happening on the first bass track, and it's going to look at both timing and polarity, and it's going to see what the very best combination of those two things are, and it's going to change that and see if it improves the sound. So let's find out if it actually does. Yeah, I'd say that's a huge improvement. So what you can hear the difference. This didn't change the polarity. It just delayed the signal by 106 samples. And you'll see when I turn this on and off, the difference. Off is no processing, on is the correction. And you can see what a huge difference it makes to the sound before I add an EQ or anything. It's like all that solidness of the bass just came right back in, and all of that kind of mid-range punch really cut through it as well. So I can do the same thing with live drums. I have two kick drum mics. Let me get rid of the bass. So if I have kick drum mics, okay, so one really bright and snappy and one kind of deeper into the drum or kind of at the edge of the outside of the drum, catching a bigger picture of the two. And this one, the GT55, has more low end, so I'm going to make that my master. And I'm going to send out of 3, and I'm going to make this pick up 3 and run it and just detect. All right, so plus 43 was the number. And you can hear it's just a little more solid and a little more punchy as soon as that thing comes back on. I'll show you the difference again. All right, so the one I want to show you guys that's honestly the mind blower is this next one, because most people don't really consider if you're using one shots and like programmed, kick, snare, hat kind of stuff. I don't think you take into consideration the fact that it's entirely possible that the kicks that you're picking are canceling each other out. And so when I start a mix, if I've got multiple kicks hitting on the same kick together, one of the first things I usually do is check out the phase and make sure that they're reinforcing each other, or at minimum not canceling each other. So let me play you each of these different kicks so you can hear what we're working with. Hang on, all right. Okay, so 3 real different sounding kicks. So here are the first two together. Okay, they seem to reinforce each other, right? So let me see what happens. Oh, well, that's because I already did that. So, oh crap, let me just start this again. Oh no, don't freeze, don't freeze. Don't freeze. Welcome to Pro Tools land. Okay, well, we'll see if Pro Tools freezes. Oh, alright. Okay, no, I don't want all of that to... Okay, we'll go to the next... Oh, did that do something? There we go. Okay. Let me start this one more time. It'll be quick. So I'm receiving on 2. And I'm monitoring delay and polarity. I'm going to hit. And we'll see what happens. This is the two of them together with no phase correction. Sometimes it takes a while. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable that before I even touch an EQ, I can get that much more low end out of 2 kicks just by aligning them, and auto align makes it super easy. There's a bunch of companies that make these things now, so I'm sure there's other choices. This is the one I gravitate towards, and a lot of times if I'm doing a live drum kit, I will align the top and bottom snare together as one, and then I'll take that and I will align the cymbals to the snare and the toms to the snare, and kind of get everything going to the snare. Usually leave the kick by itself. It usually doesn't fight the overheads, but if it's fighting the overheads, then I figure maybe I align the kick to the snare as well. So sometimes you can really pull the focus of a live drum kit together using techniques like this. Same with like guitars that are, multi-miking amplifiers and stuff. Something like this is an absolute must. It's going to really improve your sound because it's just taking those kind of misaligned waveforms and finding the best alignment for them where they really help each other instead of canceling each other out. So the third one is this. So here's the first 2 together so far. I had my mic off for that whole time. Sorry. All right, so I still got to get used to that. It's on a foot switch. Okay, so what I'm doing, listen to this. Do you hear just how much phase that's canceling out when I add that kick drum in? It's crazy. So I'm gonna auto align that, and we'll see how much more into focus it makes that. I think I receive on 2. All right. You gotta be kidding me. And now we have 3 kicks all interacting with each other. So each one of those kicks is affecting the other somehow. So hopefully this is like the best balance of all worlds. But you can hear what a gigantic difference it makes just putting this thing in phase. And you see the phase was reversed on this as well. So it's not only flipping the phase, but it's realigning it by 116 samples. Listen again. Just crazy. Okay. So, yeah, if you weren't up on phase and stuff like that, now you've got a little bit more ammunition. Okay. More question and answer. I'm going to go to the chat roll. Chat roll from Rob Haney. Is it Haney? Haney? What model of high-end headphones do you use? I mentioned them last week. Oh, I have them. So, the normal, everyday, affordable ones are these. I don't know if you can see them. Audio-Technica. I think they're MTH 50s. They're not the X's. There's a 50X and a 50. I have them both. I hate the 50X's, and I love the 50s. The 50X has the detachable cable. The 50s, it's included. You can find these maybe on eBay or Reverb or something. And they carry low end exceptionally well, and they're like 100, 150 bucks. But these are the ones that you want to know about. So, I've been mixing with these maybe 4 or 5 months now. They are Audeze, Audeze. I had never heard of them. I found these guys at the AES show in New York in October. These are LCD XCs, so they're closed back. It's basically like putting a pair of speakers on your head. So yeah, I mean, it's just it. You look ridiculous, but sonically, I've never heard anything like remotely like it. It's really just stupid how good they sound. And I found they've come in super handy for mixing or critical listening while I'm not in my main studio with my perfect monitoring environment. That thing takes the room out of the equation, and I don't have to worry about it anymore. So yeah, I can't remember. I think I paid like $1,300 for those, but worth it. Same with my Atoms. It's basically like your other pair of main speakers. Okay, so we got a good chat roll going. Yeah, so let me know in the chat roll what everybody's doing for the apocalypse. If you're sequestered, if you're making music, if you're still working, if you're, what the hell? I'm walking the dog every day, so, we're playing some video games and walking the dog every day and just trying to get outside a bunch and enjoy the weather, which is getting super nice here. Hopefully you guys are all doing okay. All right. Miro asks, how did I learn to listen to compression? Well, Miro, that's a really loaded question. Let me see if I can help answer it a little bit. I think one of the best ways to learn how compression sounds is to fire up a compressor and play with it for a while. And maybe I can do that with... Yeah, I could use this. So let me show you virtual mix track. Let me just put a gate on this thing so I am really only listening to the kick and not the in-betweens. No. Sorry, I'll do this as fast as I can. Drums gate. Here we go. Come on. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, now compression-wise, I'm gonna go with the distressor because it's the most versatile. The distressor is a great compressor to learn with because it is so versatile and does so many different things, and you can really hear it working when you want it to and not hear it working when you don't. So what I would suggest that you do to learn how to hear compression is exactly what I'm going to do right now. You start playing with it. Listen to the difference in, I'm going to set this for a super fast attack and release. And then I'm going to set it for a super slow attack and fast release. And then I'll move it around and just listen to the differences of what these things do and how they react. So you see what's happening when I go super fast attack with it is it's crushing all of my transients, which sometimes you want that. You just have to know what's happening. But when you slow the attack down, you hear all that punch go through, and then the compressor just grabs it. So I'll show you one more just so you can kind of get a basic of compression. So that might give you some ideas. If I were you and I really wanted to learn how to hear compression, I would do a ton of listening like that with vocals, and then I listen to what the compressor's doing and then bypass it. And then change up the settings and listen to what it's doing and then bypass it. And just really start to get a sense of, you know, a slower attack sounds like this. Heavy compression sounds like this. Light compression sounds like that. And it's even doing that, it's going to take your ears a long time to develop the subtleties that you really want to be able to hear and control, but you got to start somewhere, and that's where the somewhere is to start. Let's see. Okay, next question. Jessica asks, what would you say are the biggest mistakes you see young or new mixers and producers make? Also, if you were just starting out today as a mixer without the big studios and hardware, how would you go about it? Well, Jessica, good questions. I think the biggest mistakes I see young mixers make is that, and this is a beat maker problem too, and an engineer problem, is you don't have to EQ everything. You don't have to compress everything. Not every channel is supposed to have a treatment. In fact, I would say more so now than ever, here we go. More so now than ever, less tends to be more mixing because sounds are already coming out of the, you're using great sample library sounds to begin with. They probably don't need any or much treatment depending on what kind of things that you're going for. Same with the sounds that come out of synthesizers and things like that. So what is going on? Sorry guys. Something's feeding back. That's interesting. Okay, so I'm not sure why that's feeding back, but hopefully it's not feeding back into your headphones. So here's a song that I mixed for Grizzly Adams. It's called Take a Sip. It's got 3 million streams on Spotify alone, so it's done pretty well for us so far. Could be a big licensing song for us as well. I don't know what's loud. Oh, hang on. Oh, sorry about that. I don't know what the fuck that. Oh, I see what's happening. Why didn't I hear that? Okay, sorry about that, guys. Uh, I don't know what the heck that was and why that's even happening, but I'm gonna have to work around it. The dangers of working on the fly and pulling up sessions that you don't know exactly what's gonna happen. But here's my point that I was getting to. Is here I have a session with a massive amount of tracks. I mean, this shit has, probably 100, 150 tracks total. And if you look at, I'm doing almost no processing on anything up until like here. It's mostly picking the right sounds and balance. I produce this as well, so I picked those sounds, or Brent picked those sounds, or Scrizzly picked those sounds. So I think it's a combination of picking the right sounds is the most important thing. And hopefully, if you're not the one picking the sounds, working with people who pick good sounds. And then the second most important thing is striking great balances. I've watched great mixers mix time and time again, guys like Andy Wallace, who man, if you looked at a finished Andy Wallace SSL after he's done printing his mix, you would wonder if he had started yet. It looks so basic and rudimentary, like he's not really doing much at all. And then you hit play, and that shit jumps out of the speakers like nobody else can do it. And you just wonder, like, what is he doing that nobody else seems to really be able to capture? And most of it is having a great sense of musicality and balance, and knowing that the most important thing is not the sonics. The most important thing is not the sonics, it's the way that the song makes you feel. So the most polished, pure, perfect mix is not necessarily what you want. You want the mix that makes that song hit you the way that that writer, that artist wants it to hit you. So I'm not really sure if that super answers your questions, but I think it kind of does. If I was starting out today as a mixer post Big Studios, how would I go about it? I'd probably get on Sound Better. I think Sound Better is a really cool platform. Brent is on Sound Better. He does really well on there. I'm not on Sound Better. I don't really need to be. But I think a lot of guys, it's a great place to find work and find people who are looking for people with the skill sets that you have. So I'd probably get on there, and I would network like crazy, and I would get myself, well, before all this COVID stuff, I would have said get yourself to one of the big cities where it's happening. Number one would be LA, unless you want like country, then it would be Nashville, New York, Miami. Those are really about your only choices, and LA is really the biggest choice right now. But COVID is changing everything. I've gotten a bunch of questions about, like, how has COVID changed? Well, COVID's changed a lot of things. I don't know how people get in the same room and work together anymore. Okay. Oh, I've been dying to get to this next question. This is a really good one. Can reverb play a role in making instruments seem larger than they are? Oh, yes, they can. I hope this one doesn't feed back. Alright, I'm going to show you this one last thing, and then I'm going to tell you about shooting pool with Jay-Z. Alright. Okay, so the question from Brian was, can reverb play a role in making instruments seem larger than they are? Great question. So, I have pulled up a guitar here. Let me make sure I don't have anything else happen. I don't think so. Okay, I have a guitar here. Sorry, I had my mic on. And I'm going to pull up 5 different effects. And it's going to be, bus 1 and 2 is going to be the capital chambers that I have dialed in to be really short. Then an H delay on ping pong. And then a plate with Verb Suite, and then this really short slappy type of thing with effects rack. Was it Echo Boy? Yeah, Echo Boy. And then a really long carrying reverb with Valhalla, and then finally another style of long carrying reverb with Verb Suite. And so here's all the different styles. Oh. So, love the way that sounds on guitars. This I don't think works. This is the delays. And then we have the Verb Suite plate. So this model's a Lexicon 480L A plate, which is like the first program that comes up on a 480 when you use it. Now we have the effects rack. This is like just a slap. I use this setting actually a lot on vocals. I don't know how it'll sound on guitars. Hear how it takes that mono center guitar track and it makes it sound like you got two other guitar players playing along with you on the side. And that same thing is happening when I use that thing on vocals. Okay, and then let's see. Then I have Valhalla. Yeah, man. That's super arena rock. And then I wanted to show you this other longer reverb that's super dark from Verb Suite. This is another 480 model, large church. This thing, if you have like a soft picking guitar, this is the most beautiful long carrying reverb. It's just gorgeous. Alright, enough of those. Alright, I think I'm gonna go into story time. So tonight's story is shooting pool with Jay-Z. So I used to, well, I still do, a lot of work with producer Just Blaze. He's a good friend. I've known him forever. And he was producing a single remix for Lenny Kravitz, a song called Storm off the Baptism album. And it was the Storm remix featuring Jay-Z, which they actually shot a video to and serviced it, and it did okay. I don't know about the video, but they definitely serviced it. But anyway, I digress. So I show up to Baseline Studios in New York City, and I'm bringing all of my gear, and my assistant's setting up all my racks and speakers and everything. So while they're setting up the mix session, I go into the lounge at Baseline. And Baseline was like a super well-known hip-hop studio. I think Rockefeller either owned it or did most of their shit out of there, and Jay did a ton of work out of there, so he was really familiar. And so I'm shooting pool by myself in the lounge. And about my second game shooting by myself, these 10 dudes walk into the room and just like line up along the wall watching me play. It's like 10 big black dudes, all from New York City. And there's me, I'm the only white guy in the place, and you know, I'm shooting. So one of the guys steps up first and he's like, "Yo, can we play?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's play." So we start playing, and this dude is clearly better than me. But I'm not bad. I can shoot a little bit. So we're playing, and it gets down to the last few shots, and I just get on a streak, and I end up beating him. Lucky. Totally lucky. So the next dude steps up and challenges me, and I play him, and he's even better than the first guy. I definitely should have lost to that guy, but he blew his last shot, and I made my last shot. So 2 games down, 2 games I should have lost. Up steps Jay-Z, and Jay-Z challenges me to a game, and I'm thinking, oh Christ, like should I just play normal? Should I don't know. And so I just played, and of course by about mid game I'm like, fuck, I want to fucking win this game. So I'm playing hard, and he's playing well, and it gets down to the last shots, and I have a shot on the 8-ball corner pocket, and I call it, and I line it up, and I shoot it, and it's going towards the pocket, and at the last possible moment it just catches the corner, and I missed my shot, and Jay dropped his next 2 and beat me and won the game. And so the game that I should have won, I blew it. Interesting side note, later on that night, Beyonce shows up, and with Jay, of course. And I've met Beyonce maybe 3 times now. I've gotten to record her 1 time, and vocally just unbelievable. I mean, everything you think Beyonce is vocally, she is. She's incredible. But anyway, she wasn't singing this night. She was just hanging out with Jay, and Jay was only there to check out the mix. But she was just such a super sweetheart, no makeup, regular plain shirt, could have been anybody, but just, treated everybody in the room normal, and I've always really liked any of my interactions with that girl. Jay-Z, too. Jay-Z's great guy to work with. I hope some of you guys get the chance sometime. In fact, I hope I get the chance again. So I hope Jay calls for his next project. I would love to have any part of it. So I'm going to do a lightning round of questions before I get into my sprint mix. And let me take some off of the chat roll. Let's see. Ace the MC, wondering why particular artist albums do you only have 1 song or production? Just curious how that works. So that's pretty much the norm nowadays. Not always. Like, for instance, producer No ID produced the entire Jay-Z 444 album. But usually in hip-hop land, you have like 8 or 10 different producers, each producing 1 or 2 tracks on an album, even with most genres nowadays, because it's a singles market, and the importance of getting a hit single is everything nowadays for most artists. So you see everybody taking their swings trying to get the singles. That's why you probably see so many different people on one album. And following up, where am I from? Cincinnati, Ohio, born and raised. My production partner Brent is also from Cincinnati, Ohio. We're a couple Cincinnati boys. Zoe Major asks if you have you ever mixed with Trilian bass samples? Any advice on maximizing the sound? I actually do use Trilian. The Spectrasonics Trilian stuff I use all the time. It's one of my main go-to bass sounds. And I just scroll through presets as I'm playing while I'm producing until I find the one thing that I'm like, oh shit, because the perfect bass line for one song is not going to be the perfect bass line for the next song. And there's 500 choices in there. One of them is going to suit you. So just keep going through presets until that one inspiring one hits you. And also make sure that when you're auditioning bass sounds that you're in the correct octave and roughly volume balanced. It definitely helps you pick. From Roy Wilson, do you feel like working through a console is necessary? Roy, it is not necessary. Those of us who do it, like for me, I was pretty much born and raised, working on gigantic SSLs and Neves. It's where my comfort zone is. It's where I like to be. So I like to mix analog on a big console. And I also find for myself, when everybody else is turning left, it's sometimes not a bad thing to turn right. So if everybody else is mixing in the box and almost nobody is mixing analog, I'm the niche. I'm the guy offering things that almost nobody else is offering. So for me, I think it's a combination of the format that I love to work in. I can definitely mix in the box. I'm good at it. You know, I prefer the analog approach. Okay. Rob Haney asks, do you have parallels for drums and Volks? I rarely parallel things. It's just not something that I adopted much. Sometimes I do. The Slate VMR Monster compressor is probably the one that I use to parallel most when I do, because it's just got the wet-dry balance on it right there. And it can go from really severe. The Empirical Labs Arouser, I think, is the other one that I do a lot of parallel with, because it's got a wet-dry balance. You can also set it up on the console using the master compressor. Okay. Heart and Soul Productions asks, can you auto-align an 808 and kick drum pattern? Okay, here's the weird thing. No, you can't, but the kick drum, it's entirely possible that the kick drum is absolutely going to be affected by the 808. And depending on what note the 808 is playing, if you're playing a moving 808 bass line, the individual notes might affect each kick hit differently. So I am not kidding. You may have a track where you have a moving 808 bass line and you have kicks hitting with it. Some of those kicks are going to be canceled out somewhat from the 808, and some of them are going to be reinforced. And if you listen to it, you're going to hear a whole bunch of really uneven kick drums because of the way the phase interacts with the bass line. So that can be a problem. You have to really be careful with it. All right, Kev J. I'm currently using an M audio interface for home studio recording. Do I really need a compressor? I assume you mean, do you really need an analog compressor before your interface? No, I don't think so. That's not how I do it, but I don't think anybody else necessarily has to do it the way I am, especially to start out. I think, you know, if you get a microphone, plug it directly into your interface that has a mic pre, and then you can use a plug-in compressor. I think a lot of people nowadays are doing that, so it's not something that I personally do. I'm almost always recording through a compressor, but you can certainly use plug-in compression on the way in the same way. So no. Okay, Faye. Next question. I understand making the beat before lyrics or vice versa is interchangeable. From your experience, which one is easier for you? So basically, do I make music first and then write to it, or do I come up with the concept and write and then create music around it? And honestly, I do it both ways. I tend to find that where I write the most for myself is down on the beach in Ecuador. And I'll just walk for hours, and it's like when you get out of your comfort zone as a writer, when you get out of the things that you do every single day over and over, it lets new experiences and new impulses in. And so I try and get like away from my natural experiences to get that that spark of initial ideas. But I'd say more often than not, we're making the music first, and then we're trying to write something great on top of it. That's more the norm nowadays. Reggie Marcus, what are my options if I want to produce a song with a sample in it? Is there an easy or cheap way? Yeah, Reggie, just do it. So I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. This is just real world advice. If you sample something, here's what you can't do with it. You cannot license it for sync opportunities. So film, TV, video games, that stuff is off. You might get called out, like on Spotify or YouTube, might shut you down with an uncleared sample, but chances are you flipped it in some way that their radar can't detect it. And the reality is, nobody is going to come after you for sampling that song until that song has made a very, very significant amount of money. And if it's made enough money for you to get sued over, man, take the win, go make another beat, and, you know, give up whatever you have to give up on that one. Use it as promotion and use that to propel your career beyond that. So sample away. You know, when you're on a low level, don't worry about it so much. You know, if you get to the point where you're signed to a record label, the record label is going to clear all of the samples anyway. You don't have to worry about that. So independent, I say typically go nuts. All right. Let's see. Bolu asks, what's on your mix bus? I think I showed most of that earlier. Plugin Alliance HG2 usually gets on there. Manly Verimu, UAD Pultec Pro Legacy, Brainworks BX Digital is a mainstay. FabFilter L2 is often a finisher. Occasionally I'll use Ozone. I like Ozone. Okay. Blake. Mixing drums and separating a lane for the mix. How do you recognize when you need to create a lane for the drums to pump through? I think this is probably an experience thing, but also listening loud and soft and kind of everywhere in between, and checking and making sure that your drums are present but not overpowering in each of those volume listening levels, because it's going to hit you differently at each level, but it still needs to sound good at each level. So that's usually what I do. Make sure that the drums feel balanced at low level as well as high level. Rob asks, vocal processing to sit vocals in a track and soften harsh vocals. I think there's a plugin called Soothe. That's been a big one. That is a good tool, and it's one of these kind of like auto align, in that it analyzes your signal and in real time it ducks out the problem spots. So it can be a little bit severe. You got to be a little bit careful with it. If you haven't seen Soothe yet, let me just show you Soothe on the lead vocal here. New York City. Where is Oak Sound? Soothe. Come on now.
New York City, gonna make you numb when you lose your life as you once knew it.
So,
and everybody's lost behind the million faces passing by.
I don't know if you can really hear that, but you can see what it's doing in real time. It's analyzing it and ducking out problem frequencies. So that's one of the main ones that I use. Sometimes I'll get in there with an equalizer with a really tight notch and notch out ringy frequencies that aren't really musical and aren't contributing to the vocal presence. So let's see. Ooh. Cast out. As a seasoned veteran, what ways are you getting out of your comfort zone and growing? Love that question. Well, cast out. Ecuador is another. If I could spend most of my time in Ecuador and still have my wife and my dog with me, I would probably stay there most of the time. I can still work down there. I have a great studio down there. I mixed some of the BTS stuff from the new album down there. So I feel getting out of my comfort zone here and going there is really expanding and creatively inspiring. But also, I listen to New Music Friday on Spotify as often as I can. Comfort zone. I get to mix and produce music from all over the world, so I get a lot of really strange calls that a lot of other people don't get. So I'd say my comfort zone is much wider than most other people's, but I think that series of inspirations is really what helps me. Let's see. So I'm going to do a sprint mix now. So I got to remind you guys to like and subscribe to the video channel and ring the bell on the YouTube channel, all of that good stuff. You guys are more savvy with that shit than I am, so you know what to do. But, I just started this channel, and the more people we have on it, the more things that I can do with it quicker. And so I'm definitely going to be adding a lot of really great content to it, hopefully over the next month. I'm doing these broadcasts twice a week now. I don't know if I'm going to keep this up. I hope to. It's a boatload of work, though. I'll tell you that much. But I'm really enjoying it, and hopefully I'm helping you guys out a lot. Okay. So, thanks again for tuning in and engaging. The chat roll was super busy tonight. It was really great. Thank you guys and girls. This is a song. Oh, I've got to zero out my past work. All right, let me get this down to 0, and then I'll do a sprint mix for you and end the broadcast. Okay. Boom, boom. Can go from super zeroed out. So I'll go through a couple of the challenges of this mix while I'm showing you. So it's a sprint mix, so I have 10 minutes start to finish to mix this entire thing. I think it's, how many stems is it? 31 stems. So there's 31 unique different things to adjust and balance and deal with in 10 minutes. Most of the stems sound pretty good already. This is more about your ability to balance and find the way to bring the song together and make it sound like a song as fast as possible. And this is just super, like, if you're sitting next to your artist and he's wanting to cut vocals and waiting on you, and you haven't got a rough mix together, you're going to be glad that you did the sprint mixes. So without further ado, I'm going to set the clock to 10 minutes. 10 minutes on the clock, and time to go. All right, so thanks for hanging out with me again. I'm going to do this, and then that'll be that. 10 minutes on the clock. I'm live. That's a ribbon mic. Whew. That is mentally exhausting, but a lot of fun. So I'm going to end the broadcast and just print this mix and let you guys ride out with some Don't Believe in Ghosts. So once again, thank you all for joining me on the broadcast. I hope you're quarantining well. And don't forget the Sprint mixing discounts tonight. Anybody who wants it, all the Sprint stuff is 50% off until morning. So I'm not publicizing that anywhere. It's just for the people on the broadcast who want to check them out. And there's going to be a lot more of them this year for sure, as I'm trying to do one on each of these broadcasts. So let's see. I got to set an end time here. Oh, I didn't tell you where to get the Sprint mixes. So if you don't know, I have a school, audioschoolonline.com. And all of my stuff is, I have a ton of tutorials at the school. I teach everything from mixing to production, you name it, it's up there. But I think the Sprint mixes are some of the best ones on the entire site. So I'm going to close the show with a Sprint mix, Don't Believe in Ghosts. And this song is called Hold Your Breath and Brace for the Crash. Fucking love that title. And I produced this ages ago, and just love this song, love this band. All right, here we go.